When I walked into my own dining room carrying the pot roast I had spent 4 hours preparing, my daughter-in-law Claire looked up from her phone and said with a tight smile, "You know, Dorothy, I've been thinking. Maybe it's time we found you a nice little place in a more appropriate neighborhood. You just don't belong here anymore." The words hit me like a physical blow. My son Marcus kept cutting his meat as if she hadn't just suggested I didn't belong in the house I had owned for 32 years. My daughter-in-law's parents, Richard and Patricia, shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Claire's smile didn't waver as she reached for the mashed potatoes I had whipped by hand. "Don't belong here." If you want to know what I did next and how this story ends, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps me share more stories like this. Thank you, and let's continue. Asterisk. I, who had bought this house in 1992 when this neighborhood was considered rough and no bank wanted to give a black single mother a mortgage. I, who had raised Marcus here alone after his father died when he was 8. I, who had paid off this house through 25 years of 12-hour nursing shifts. I, who had watched this neighborhood transform from working class to trendy, from affordable to exclusive. I stood there in my own dining room, holding a serving spoon that suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, watching my family eat food I had prepared in a house I owned, while my daughter-in-law told me I didn't belong. Claire, Patricia, her mother, said nervously, "That's not what you meant to say." "Oh, but it is what I meant," Claire replied, her voice still sweet. "I mean, look at this place. It's so dated. The neighborhood has evolved. Property values have tripled. Dorothy would be so much more comfortable somewhere that reflects her, cultural background, maybe something more urban." Cultural background, urban. The words were careful, coded, but the meaning was clear. This white woman who had married my son 2 years ago was telling me, a black woman, that I didn't belong in my own home because the neighborhood was now too white, too expensive, too good for me. I had spent $180 on this dinner. I had made Marcus's favorite pot roast from his grandmother's recipe. I had prepared Claire's requested gluten-free bread from scratch. I had bought the organic wine she preferred, the imported cheese she liked. And now, sitting at my table, eating my food, in my house, she was telling me I should leave. For months, I had noticed the comments. The way Claire would touch my hair without asking and call it exotic. The way she would speak louder and slower to me as if I couldn't understand English. The way she would mention her diverse friend group every time race came up. The way she would ask Marcus, in front of me, if he ever worried about our neighborhood becoming too gentrified. But this was different. This was a direct attack, delivered with a smile, in front of my entire family. And everyone was just going to sit there and pretend it was acceptable. "Mom's pot roast is amazing," Marcus said quietly, still not looking at anyone. "Just like always." "Oh, I'm sure it is," Claire said. "Dorothy is so good with traditional recipes. It's just that Marcus and I have been thinking about the future, about children, and we want them to grow up in a neighborhood where they feel like they belong, where they fit in. My future grandchildren wouldn't fit in because of me, because their grandmother was black and owned a house in a neighborhood that was now too white for black people to belong." "Claire," Richard finally spoke, his voice uncomfortable. "Perhaps this isn't the best time to discuss real estate." "Why not?" Claire laughed. "We're all family here, and I'm just being practical. Dorothy, you have to admit, you'd be happier somewhere more culturally aligned. Somewhere you could be around your own people." My own people. As if the neighbors I had known for 32 years weren't my people. As if the community I had helped build wasn't mine. As if ownership and belonging were determined by the color of my skin rather than the deed with my name on it. "This is my home," I said quietly. "I've lived here for 32 years. "Exactly," Claire said brightly, as if I had just agreed with her. 32 years? Don't you think it's time for a change? Marcus and I have been looking at condos in the city. We found some really nice ones in neighborhoods that are more, diverse. You'd love it there." She was trying to sell me on moving out of my own house. She was gift-wrapping her racism in concern, packaging her desire to push me out as if she were doing me a favor. I looked at Marcus, my son, my baby boy who I had raised alone, who had cried in my arms when kids at school made fun of him for not having a father, who had held my hand at his graduation and told me I was his hero. That boy was now a 33-year-old man who couldn't even look at me while his wife told me I didn't belong in my own home. "Marcus," I said, "do you agree with this?" He finally looked up, and I saw the answer in his eyes before he spoke. Mom, Claire just wants what's best for you. The neighborhood has changed a lot. Maybe it would be easier. Easier for who? I interrupted. Easier for you? For her? Mom, don't make this into something it's not, he said, his voice taking on that defensive tone I had heard so many times in the past 2 years. Claire's trying to help. Help me leave my own house. Help you find something more suitable, Claire corrected, her voice still syrupy sweet. Dorothy, I'm not trying to insult you. I'm being realistic. This house is worth at least $800,000 now. You could sell it, buy something smaller somewhere else, and have money left over. Doesn't that sound nice? $800,000. She had looked up the value of my house. She had calculated how much money I would have if I sold it. She had already planned out my displacement. And where would this money go? I asked calmly. Well, into your retirement, of course, Claire said. But something flickered in her eyes. Something that told me the truth before she even finished the sentence. And Marcus and I thought, since you'd be downsizing anyway, maybe you could help us with a down payment. You know, keep the house in the family. There it was, the truth beneath the racism. She didn't just want me out because I was black. She wanted me out because she wanted my house. She wanted my equity. She wanted what I had built over 3 decades of hard work. Let me make sure I understand, I said slowly. You want me to sell my house, move to a more appropriate neighborhood, and give you the money so you can buy this house from me. Not give, Claire corrected quickly. It would be an investment in your son's future, in your grandchildren's future. The grandchildren who won't fit in as long as I'm here, I said. Mom, that's not what she meant, Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. Then what did she mean, Marcus? Explain to me what more appropriate neighborhood means. Explain cultural background. Explain your own people. The silence that followed was deafening. Patricia looked like she wanted to sink through the floor. Richard was suddenly very interested in his wine glass. Claire's smile had finally cracked, replaced by something harder, meaner. I'm not going to apologize for being honest, Claire said. This neighborhood isn't for you anymore. You worked hard to buy this house, and now you can cash out and live somewhere you actually belong. I don't see what's so offensive about that. I stood up from my chair, the one at the head of the table that had been mine for 32 years. The chair I had sat in through countless dinners, birthdays, holidays. The chair where I had celebrated Marcus's acceptance to college, his first job, his engagement. You don't see what's offensive, I repeated slowly, about telling a black woman she doesn't belong in the house she owns because the neighborhood is now too white for her. You don't see what's offensive about suggesting I should leave so you can move in. You don't see what's racist about any of this. Oh God, here we go, Claire rolled her eyes. Everything's about race with you people. You people. The mask was off now. The sweet smile was gone. This was who she really was. I looked at Marcus one more time, hoping, praying he would finally say something, stand up for me, defend me, tell his wife that what she had just said was unacceptable. But he just sat there, fork in hand, looking at his plate. I think, I said quietly, that dinner is over. Dorothy, come on, Claire said. Don't be dramatic. We're just having a conversation. No, I replied. You were having a conversation about how to steal my house while making it sound like you're doing me a favor. I'm asking you to leave. This is ridiculous. Claire stood up, grabbing her purse. Marcus, are you going to let her talk to me like this? Marcus looked between us, torn, weak, unwilling to make a choice that would cost him anything. Mom, maybe we should all just calm down and get out, I said. Not yelling, not screaming, just firm, final, all of you. Get out of my house. They left. Richard and Patricia with mumbled apologies, Claire with righteous indignation, Marcus with one last look that might have been regret but wasn't enough. When the door closed behind them, I stood in my dining room surrounded by the remains of dinner. The pot roast no one had finished, the homemade bread that sat half-eaten, the expensive wine I had bought to please people who didn't respect me. I walked to the mantel above my fireplace and looked at the photos there. Pictures of Marcus growing up in this house. Pictures of me on the day I got my nursing degree. A photo of my late husband, taken a month before he died, standing in the front yard of this very house. This was my home. I had earned it. I had fought for it. I had built a life here. And I would be damned if I let anyone take it from me. I pulled out my phone and looked at the calendar. Every third Sunday for the past 2 years, I had hosted dinner for Marcus and Claire. Every third Sunday, I had cooked and cleaned and welcomed them into my home. I opened the calendar app and deleted every future dinner, every single one. Then I sat down in my living room, in the house I owned, in the neighborhood I belonged to, and I began to plan. Claire had made a mistake. She had shown me exactly who she was. She had revealed her true intentions, and most importantly, she had underestimated me. She thought I was just an old black woman she could push around. She thought my son's silence meant I had no power. She thought she could take everything I had built and call it help. She had no idea who she was dealing with, and she was about to find out. Monday morning, I woke up at 5 a.m., as I had for the past 40 years of nursing. But instead of my usual routine, I did something different. I called my lawyer. Gerald Mason had handled my house purchase in 1992, my husband's estate when he passed, and my will updates over the years. He was a black man in his 70s who had seen every trick in the book when it came to people trying to displace property owners who didn't belong. "Dorothy," he said when I finished explaining Sunday's dinner, "how long have they been living in your house?" My blood went cold. "What do you mean living in my house? They have their own apartment. Are you sure about that? Because what you're describing sounds like the beginning of an adverse possession claim. They get you to move out, they move in, and after a certain period, they can claim the property." "Gerald, that's not possible. My name is on the deed." "Your name is on the deed now," he corrected. "But if you leave and they establish residency, especially if they're paying utilities or making improvements, it gets complicated." "Has Marcus still have keys to your house?" "Of course. He's my son. Change the locks today. And Dorothy, I need you to document everything. Every conversation about the house, every comment Claire has made, every time Marcus has been silent while she said these things. We may need it." After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen calculating, not just the value of my house, but the years of my life tied to it. The $850 monthly mortgage payments I had made for 20 years until it was paid off. The $15,000 I had spent on the new roof in 2010. The $8,000 for the kitchen renovation in 2015. The countless hours of yard work, repairs, maintenance. This house represented $347,000 in payments, improvements, and equity growth over 32 years. And Claire wanted me to hand it over so she could live somewhere appropriate for white people. At 9 a.m., my phone rang. "Marcus." I let it ring twice before answering. "Mom, we need to talk about last night." "I agree," I said calmly. "You sat silent while your wife told me I don't belong in my own home because I'm black." "Mom, that's not what she meant. You're taking it out of context." "Then explain the context, Marcus. Explain what more appropriate neighborhood means. Explain your own people." Silence on the other end. "That's what I thought," I said. "Marcus, I raised you better than this. I raised you to stand up against racism, not to sit silent while it happens at your own mother's dinner table." "Claire's not racist, Mom. She's just practical about real estate values and demographics." "Demographics," I repeated. "Your wife used demographics to explain why your black mother should leave her own home so white people can feel comfortable. And you think that's not racist? I think you're being dramatic. Claire was trying to help you make a smart financial decision. A smart financial decision that would put money in your pocket and me out of my house." He was quiet for a moment. "Mom, you have to admit, the house is too big for just you. And with the property values going up, it makes sense to cash out." "And move where, Marcus? To a more diverse neighborhood? Away from the community I've been part of for 32 years? "I didn't say that. But you didn't say anything when Claire did. You sat there and cut your pot roast while your wife told me I don't belong." "Mom, please. Can we just move past this? Claire feels bad about how things went." "Claire feels bad," I said slowly, that she said the quiet part out loud. "She doesn't feel bad about what she thinks. And neither do you, apparently." I hung up before he could respond. At 11 a.m., I went to the bank where I had done business for 30 years. Mr. Thompson, the branch manager, greeted me with his usual warmth. "Mrs. Johnson, how can I help you today? I need to know if anyone has tried to access information about my accounts or my house deed." His expression changed. "Why do you ask?" "Because someone is trying to convince me to sell my house, and I want to know if they've been doing homework." He excused himself and came back 20 minutes later with a printout. "Mrs. Johnson, 3 weeks ago, someone called asking about the property value and whether there were any liens. They claimed to be your son. Was it Marcus's voice? I didn't take the call, but the person had enough information to pass our verification questions. They knew your maiden name, your late husband's name, your son's birthday. Claire. She had gotten the information from Marcus and called pretending to be him. She had been planning this for weeks, maybe months. Mr. Thompson, I need to add additional security to all my accounts. No one but me can access information. No one but me can make changes. I don't care who they claim to be. Consider it done. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my sister Diane in Atlanta. We had drifted apart because Marcus didn't like her. He said she was too political and always bringing up race. Dorothy? She sounded shocked. It's been 2 years. I know. I'm sorry. I let Marcus convince me you were the problem. And now? I told her everything. When I finished, Diane was quiet for a long moment. Do you remember what I told you at his wedding? She asked finally. When I met Claire, you said she looked at you like you were the help. I said she looked at all of us like we were the help. Your friends, your family, anyone black. And you told me I was being sensitive. You were right. I know I was right. Dorothy, I've been watching this happen to you for 2 years. Every time we talked, before you stopped calling, you mentioned something Claire had said or done. The hair touching, the compliments about how articulate you are, the questions about whether you felt safe in your neighborhood. She's been laying groundwork. For what? For exactly what happened Sunday. She's been establishing a narrative that you're out of place, that you need help, that you can't take care of yourself. It's a classic displacement tactic. Make the owner feel like they don't belong so they'll leave voluntarily. But it's my house, and she wants it. Dorothy, I've seen this happen a dozen times. Black homeowners in gentrifying neighborhoods pressured out by family, by neighbors, by developers. They use everything from microaggressions to legal harassment. And when family is involved, it's even worse because you're supposed to trust them. After we hung up, I sat in my living room looking at my house with new eyes. The hardwood floors I had refinished myself, the walls I had painted, the garden I had planted. Every corner held a memory, a piece of my life, proof that I had built something lasting. And Claire wanted to erase all of it. Wednesday morning, I received a certified letter. It was from a law firm I didn't recognize. Dear Mrs. Johnson, we represent Marcus and Claire Johnson regarding the property located at 1847 Maple Street. Our clients are concerned about your ability to maintain the property and your well-being. They have requested a wellness check and property assessment. Please contact our office to schedule. They had hired a lawyer. They were actually doing this. I called Gerald immediately. This is intimidation, he said after I read him the letter. They're trying to scare you into selling. Don't respond to them. I'll handle it. Gerald, can they really do this? Can they force a wellness check? They can request one, but it won't go anywhere. You're 68 years old, working part-time as a nurse consultant, maintaining your home, paying your bills. There's no legal basis for claiming you're incompetent. Then why are they doing this? Because they're hoping you'll give up, that you'll think it's too much trouble to fight and you'll just sell. It's a psychological tactic. That night, Marcus showed up at my door unannounced. I saw him through the window, standing on my porch looking nervous. Part of me wanted to not answer, but he was still my son. Hi, sweetheart, I said, opening the door but not inviting him in. Mom, can I come in? I stepped aside, and he walked into the living room like a stranger. Mom, about the letter. Claire thought it would help. Help with what? Forcing me out of my house? Forcing you to see reason? Mom, you're 68 years old. This house is too much for you. The stairs, the maintenance, the yard work. I can handle my own house, Marcus. But why should you have to? Mom, Claire and I have been talking. We could take over the house, handle everything, and you could move into something easier. We'd make sure you were comfortable. Where, Marcus? Where would I be comfortable? In the urban neighborhood Claire suggested? Somewhere with my own people? Mom, stop making this about race. It is about race. Your wife told me I don't belong in my own home because the neighborhood is too white now. She called me you people. And you're standing here asking me to make it easy for her. I'm asking you to be practical. The house is worth $800,000. You could live anywhere. I could live here, in the house I own, that I paid for with my own money. But Mom, think about it. You could give Claire and me a start, Help us buy this house, and you'd have money left over. It keeps everything in the family." There it was, the real ask. They didn't want me to sell to a stranger. They wanted me to sell to them, probably below market value, so they could profit from my 3 decades of equity. "Let me ask you something, Marcus," I said quietly. "If I was white, would Claire be having this conversation? Would she be telling me I don't belong? Would she be suggesting I move to a more appropriate neighborhood?" He couldn't answer. "That's what I thought," I said. "Marcus, I love you. You're my son. But I will not be displaced from my own home. Not for you, not for Claire, not for anyone." "So that's it? You're choosing this house over your family?" "I'm choosing my dignity over your wife's racism. There's a difference." He left angry, and I stood at my door watching him drive away in the BMW I had helped him buy 3 years ago with a $10,000 loan he had never repaid. I walked through my house that night, touching the walls, remembering the corner where Marcus took his first steps, the kitchen where I taught him to cook, the bathroom where I had held him when he was sick. This house wasn't just property, it was my history, my legacy, my proof that I had survived and thrived despite every obstacle, and I would fight to keep it. Friday morning, I woke up to find a car I didn't recognize, parked across the street from my house. Inside sat a white man in a suit, writing something on a clipboard. I walked outside in my bathrobe and approached his car. "Can I help you?" I asked. He looked startled. "Oh, Mrs. Johnson. I'm David Fletcher from Marshall Property Assessment. Your family requested an evaluation of your home's condition." "My family?" "Yes, ma'am. Your son and daughter-in-law. They're concerned about deferred maintenance and wanted a professional assessment." "Did they mention they don't own this house? That I didn't authorize this assessment?" His face went pale. "They said they had your permission." "They lied. Get off my property." He left quickly, but the message was clear. Claire and Marcus were escalating. They were building a case, gathering evidence, creating a narrative that I couldn't maintain my own home. I called Gerald immediately. "They're going aggressive," he said after I explained. "Dorothy, I need to be honest with you. This kind of pressure campaign can work. They'll document every crack in your driveway, every paint chip, every blade of grass that's too long. They'll use it to argue you're neglecting the property. So what do I do? You fight back. Document everything they're doing. Get your own home inspection to prove the house is well maintained. And Dorothy, you need to consider getting a restraining order if this continues." A restraining order? Against my own son? That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done since my nursing days. I reached out to my old colleagues from the hospital where I had worked for 25 years. Within 2 hours, I had texts and calls from women I hadn't spoken to in years. Martha, who had been my closest friend before I retired, came over that evening with a bottle of wine and a determination that reminded me why I had loved working with her. "Tell me everything," she said. I told her. When I finished, Martha's expression had gone from sympathetic to furious. "That little racist bitch wants your house," she said flatly. "Dorothy, I've seen this exact thing happen to 3 nurses from our unit. All black women, all in gentrifying neighborhoods, all with white family members suddenly concerned about their well-being. What happened to them? 2 of them sold and moved. 1 of them fought and won, but it took 3 years and cost her relationship with her daughter. I don't want to lose Marcus." "Honey, you already lost him. The question is whether you're going to lose your house too." Her words hurt, but they were true. The Marcus who had let Claire call me "you people" without defending me was not the son I had raised. "What did the one who won do?" I asked. "She got mean. She documented everything. She got witnesses. She made it clear that anyone who came after her house would face legal consequences. And most importantly, she stopped caring about keeping the peace." "I've always kept the peace." "I know. And look where it got you." "Dorothy, sometimes peace isn't possible. Sometimes you have to choose between peace and dignity." The next morning, Saturday, I hired a professional photographer to document every inch of my house, every room, every corner, the yard, the roof, everything. Then I hired a licensed home inspector to do a complete assessment. His report came back on Monday. Property is well maintained and in excellent condition for its age. All major systems functional. No significant deferred maintenance observed. I sent copies to Gerald, to my bank, and to my insurance company. I was building my own file. On Tuesday, Claire showed up at my door without Marcus. She was dressed casually, her usual armor of designer clothes missing. She looked almost vulnerable. "Dorothy, can we talk?" I considered not letting her in, but I wanted to hear what she had to say when Marcus wasn't there to translate her racism into practical concerns. "Come in." We sat in my living room, the same room where she had eaten my food and told me I didn't belong. "I think we got off on the wrong foot," she started. "Is that what you call telling me I don't belong in my own home because I'm black?" She flinched. "I never said it was because you're black. You said I should move to a more culturally aligned neighborhood, to be with my own people. You said the neighborhood had evolved, and I didn't fit anymore. What else could that mean?" "I meant economically," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Claire, I'm a retired nurse. I own this house outright. I have a pension and savings. Economically, I fit in this neighborhood better than most people here because I actually own my property instead of being leveraged to my eyeballs." She was quiet for a moment. "You're right. I was out of line. I'm sorry." "What are you really sorry for? Sorry you said it, or sorry you meant it?" "Both," she said, and for a moment, I almost believed her. "Dorothy, I grew up in a very insulated community. I didn't know any black people until college, and I've said and done things that I'm not proud of because I didn't know better. You're a 1-year-old woman with a graduate degree. You know better. You just don't care." "That's not fair." "Fair?" I leaned forward. "You want to talk about fair? You came into my home, ate my food, and told me I should leave because the neighborhood is too white for me. You called the bank pretending to be my son to get information about my property. You sent a property assessor to my house without my permission. You hired a lawyer to intimidate me. And now you sit here and tell me I'm not being fair." Her face went red. "I don't know what you're talking about with the bank. Don't lie to me. Mr. Thompson confirmed someone called with Marcus's information asking about my property value." "That was Marcus," she said quickly. "He was worried about you and wanted to make sure everything was in order." "Without telling me? Without asking my permission?" She had no answer. "Let me tell you what I think is really happening," I said. "I think you married Marcus because you thought you were marrying up, a doctor's son from a nice neighborhood. But then you realized his mother is black and owns property that you want. And instead of having the courage to admit you're racist and materialistic, you wrapped it up in fake concern. That's not true. Then why are you here, Claire? What do you really want?" She was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, harder. The vulnerability was gone. "Marcus and I are starting a family. We need a house. This house is too big for one person. It makes sense for you to downsize and for us to take over." "Take over," I repeated. "Not buy, take over. We'd pay you fair market value. And where would that money come from? You both have student loans. You lease your cars. You're renting an apartment. Where would you get $800,000? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. They wanted me to sell them the house for less than market value, probably much less. Maybe even gift them the down payment from the proceeds. "Get out," I said quietly. "Dorothy, be reasonable." I said, "Get out. And tell Marcus that if either of you show up at my house again without an invitation, I will file a restraining order. You wouldn't do that to your own son. Watch me." After she left, I sat in my living room shaking, not from fear, but from rage. How dare she? How dare they? That evening, I did something I had been avoiding. I pulled out the photo albums from when Marcus was growing up. Pictures of him as a baby, as a toddler, as a young man. Pictures of us in this house, building a life together. I cried. Not because I was weak, but because I was grieving. Grieving the son I thought I had raised. Grieving the relationship I thought we had. Grieving the future I had imagined with grandchildren in this house. But I was done grieving for people who were still alive and choosing to hurt me. Wednesday morning, I went to the courthouse and filed for a restraining order. Not against Marcus yet, but against Claire. The harassment, the property assessor, the legal threats, it was enough. The hearing was scheduled for the following week. That afternoon, my phone rang. It was Patricia, Claire's mother. "Dorothy, I heard about the restraining order. Please, can we talk?" We met at a coffee shop downtown. Patricia looked tired, older than I remembered. "I owe you an apology," she said immediately. "I should have said something at that dinner. When Claire made those comments, I should have told her it was unacceptable." "Why didn't you?" "Because I've been making excuses for Claire her whole life. Her father was difficult, bigoted. And I told myself that if I just kept the peace, if I just smoothed things over, she would turn out okay anyway. But she didn't. No, she didn't. And I'm realizing now that my silence made me complicit. Dorothy, I don't expect you to forgive Claire, but I want you to know that what she said was wrong. What she's doing is wrong. And I told her so. How did she take that? She hung up on me. We haven't spoken in 3 days. Patricia's eyes filled with tears. I'm losing my daughter because I finally stood up to her. But you know what? It's worth it. Because what she's doing to you is cruel and racist, and I won't be part of it anymore. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Thank you for telling me that. Dorothy, if you need me to testify at the restraining order hearing, I will. I'll tell the judge everything I've witnessed. After she left, I sat in the coffee shop thinking about courage. About how hard it was to stand up to family. About how much easier it was to keep the peace than to demand justice. But peace bought at the cost of dignity wasn't peace at all. It was just slow surrender. And I was done surrendering. When I got home that evening, there was an envelope on my porch. Inside was a check from Marcus for $10,000, the loan I had given him 3 years ago that he'd never repaid. The note said, "Mom, I'm sorry, but I can't choose between you and my wife. Please reconsider selling the house. This money could be a down payment on something nice for you." I looked at the check. $10,000. After 3 years, returned not as repayment but as a bribe. I tore it into pieces and threw it in the trash. Then I called Gerald. "I want to countersue," I said, "for harassment, for attempted fraud, for everything we can throw at them." "Dorothy, are you sure? This will get ugly." "It's already ugly. The difference is now I'm going to fight back." "All right then, let's go to war." The restraining order hearing was scheduled for Monday at 10 a.m. I spent the weekend preparing with Gerald, reviewing every text message, every email, every documented interaction. "The judge will ask why you feel threatened," Gerald explained. "We need to show a pattern of harassment, not just one bad dinner." We laid it all out on my dining room table. The timeline was damning. Week 1, racist comments at dinner. Week 2, unauthorized bank inquiry. Week 3, legal intimidation letter. Week 4, unauthorized property assessment. Week 5, Claire's confrontation at my home. "This is textual harassment with racial undertones designed to force you from your property," Gerald said. "Any judge will see it." Monday morning, I dressed in my best Navy suit, the one I wore to nursing conferences. Professional, dignified, unshakable. The courthouse was downtown, a building I had driven past 1,000 times but never entered. Patricia was already there, sitting on a bench outside the courtroom, her hands clasped nervously. "Thank you for coming," I said. I wouldn't be anywhere else. At 10 a.m., we entered the courtroom. Claire was there with a lawyer, a sharp-looking woman in her 40s. Marcus sat beside Claire, his face carefully neutral. The judge was a black woman in her 60s named Judge Williams. When she looked at me, I saw recognition in her eyes. Not of me personally, but of the situation. She had seen this before. "Mrs. Johnson," she began after reviewing the petition, "tell me why you're requesting this restraining order." I stood and told my story. Not emotionally, not dramatically, just the facts, the dinner, the comments, the pattern of harassment, the attempts to force me from my home. Claire's lawyer interrupted. "Your Honor, Mrs. Johnson is mischaracterizing a family disagreement as harassment. My client and her husband are concerned about Mrs. Johnson's ability to maintain her property and her well-being." "Did Mrs. Johnson ask for this concern?" Judge Williams asked. "Well, no, but did she authorize a property assessment?" "No, Your Honor, but did she authorize anyone to contact her bank regarding her finances?" Claire's lawyer hesitated. That was her son, exercising reasonable concern. Without her knowledge or consent, Judge Williams clarified. "Mrs. Johnson, do you have documentation of these incidents?" Gerald handed over our file. The judge spent 10 minutes reviewing it, her expression growing harder with each page. "Miss Fletcher," she addressed Claire's lawyer, "your client told Mrs. Johnson she should move to a more appropriate neighborhood. What did she mean by that?" Claire stood up. "Your Honor, I was referring to the fact that the neighborhood has become very expensive. I thought Dorothy would be more comfortable somewhere more affordable." "Mrs. Johnson owns her home outright and has a pension," Judge Williams noted. "She appears to be quite comfortable financially. So what did you really mean by appropriate? I just meant, did you or did you not suggest she would be more comfortable with her own people? The courtroom went silent. I may have used that phrase, but I didn't mean it racially. I meant people her age. Mrs. Johnson is 68. You're 31. The neighborhood has residents of all ages. Try again. Claire's face went red. Your Honor, this is being blown out of proportion. It was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding that included hiring a lawyer to threaten wellness checks, sending property assessors without authorization, and making unauthorized inquiries to her bank. That's quite an elaborate misunderstanding. Judge Williams turned to Marcus. Mr. Johnson, you're Mrs. Johnson's son, correct? Yes, Your Honor. And you were present when your wife made these comments to your mother? Yes, ma'am. Did you defend your mother? Marcus's silence was damning. I see, Judge Williams said. Mrs. Johnson, I'm granting your restraining order. Miss, Claire Johnson is prohibited from contacting you, coming within 500 feet of your property, or making any inquiries regarding your finances or property. This order is effective for 1 year. Your Honor, Claire's lawyer stood. This is excessive. Miss Fletcher, your client engaged in a targeted campaign of racial harassment designed to force a property owner from her home. If anything, I'm being lenient. This order stands. After the hearing, Patricia hugged me in the hallway. Thank you for fighting back, she whispered. Maybe now Claire will finally face consequences for her actions. Marcus stood apart, looking lost. When our eyes met, I saw something that might have been regret, but it was too late for regret. I walked past him without a word. That afternoon, Diane called from Atlanta. I heard about the hearing. I'm proud of you, sis. It doesn't feel like winning. It feels like I lost my son. You didn't lose him. He lost himself. There's a difference. I keep thinking about when he was little, how he used to hold my hand crossing the street, how he would tell people, that's my mom, and she's the strongest person in the world. He was right then. And you're still that person now. He's the one who changed. That evening, I sat in my garden, the one I had planted 30 years ago. The roses were blooming, deep red and fragrant. My husband had helped me plant the first bushes before he died. I thought about legacy, about what we leave behind. This house, this garden, this life I had built, it wasn't just property. It was proof. Proof that a Black woman could own something valuable and fight to keep it. Proof that dignity mattered more than peace. Proof that standing up to racism, even from family, was possible. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You're going to regret this. You think a restraining order will stop us? I screenshotted immediately and forwarded it to Gerald. His response came within minutes. That's a violation. File a police report immediately. This gives us grounds for criminal charges. I drove to the police station and filed the report. The officer who took my statement was a young Black woman who listened carefully and said, "Ma'am, we take threats seriously. We'll follow up on this." Wednesday morning, 2 police officers showed up at Marcus and Claire's apartment. They questioned Claire about the text message. She denied sending it, but when they examined her phone, there it was. She was arrested for violating the restraining order and making threats. Released on bail the same day, but now there was a criminal record. A paper trail. Gerald called me that evening. Dorothy, Claire's lawyer, reached out. They want to settle. Settle what? I didn't sue them. No, but they know you could. They're offering $50,000 to drop everything. The restraining order, any potential civil suit, everything. They want to buy my silence. Essentially, yes. I thought about it for all of 10 seconds. No, the restraining order stays. And Gerald, I want to countersue for harassment, for the emotional distress, for the violation of my privacy with the bank. I want them to know that coming after me has consequences. This will get expensive. I have money. I've been saving for 32 years. I'll spend every penny if I have to. All right, let's do it. The countersuit was filed on Friday. We sued for $100,000 in damages, harassment, emotional distress, attempted fraud, violation of privacy. Marcus called that night, the first time we had spoken since the courthouse. Mom, please. This is destroying our lives. Claire might lose her job over the arrest. I'm being questioned at the hospital about family drama. Can't we just move past this? Move past it? I kept my voice calm. Marcus, your wife tried to force me out of my home because I'm Black. She harassed me, threatened me, violated my privacy. And you stood by and let it happen. And now you want me to move past it because facing consequences is inconvenient for you? She made a mistake. She made a choice. Multiple choices. And so did you. You chose to stay silent when she called me you people. You chose to support her campaign to force me out. You chose her racism over your mother. Those weren't mistakes, Marcus. Those were decisions. I didn't choose her over you. Then where were you? Where were you when she said I didn't belong? Where were you when she hired a property assessor? Where were you when she called the bank pretending to be you? You were right there, Marcus, and you chose silence. Silence is a choice. I'm your son. Doesn't that mean anything? You're my son. But that doesn't give you the right to let someone abuse me. Being family doesn't mean I have to accept racism. It doesn't mean I have to give up my home to make your wife comfortable. It doesn't mean I have to disappear so you can avoid difficult conversations. So you're really going to sue us? Take money from your own son? I'm going to hold you accountable. There's a difference. Mom, I can't afford this. We have student loans. We're trying to start a family. This will ruin us financially. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you let your wife harass me. Actions have consequences, Marcus. I taught you that when you were 5 years old. I'm teaching you again now. I'll never forgive you for this. I can live with that. Can you live with what you've done? He hung up. I sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I had made Marcus breakfast every morning for 18 years, and I cried. Not because I was sorry, but because I was grieving the final death of the relationship I thought we had. But I was also relieved. Relieved that I had finally chosen myself. Relieved that I had drawn a line and held it. Relieved that I was fighting instead of surrendering. Saturday morning, my doorbell rang. It was Martha and 3 other nurses from my old unit at the hospital. They brought coffee, pastries, and solidarity. "We heard," Martha said. "We're here to support you." We sat in my living room. These women who had worked beside me for decades, who had seen me at my strongest and my weakest, who understood what it meant to be a black woman fighting for what was yours. "You're doing the right thing," said Janet, who had fought her own family over inherited property. "Never apologize for refusing to be displaced. They'll try to make you feel guilty," added Teresa. "They'll say you're tearing the family apart, but they tore it apart when they came after your home. You're just refusing to pretend it didn't happen." "How did you get through it?" I asked Janet. "One day at a time, and by remembering that peace isn't always possible. Sometimes justice is all you can get, and justice is enough." After they left, I walked through my house, touching the walls, remembering all the life that had happened here. The first steps, the birthdays, the graduations, the quiet Sunday mornings, the loud family dinners. This house was my history, and I was going to keep it, no matter what it cost. 2 weeks after filing the countersuit, Gerald called with news I didn't expect. "Dorothy, during discovery, we got access to Marcus and Claire's financial records. You need to see this." He came to my house that afternoon with a folder full of documents. What I saw made my blood run cold. Marcus and Claire had taken out a $75,000 loan 3 months before that Sunday dinner. The loan application listed my house as collateral without my knowledge or permission. "How is that possible?" I asked. "They don't own my house." "They committed fraud," Gerald said grimly. "They forged documents claiming you had agreed to use the house as collateral for their loan. The lender didn't verify thoroughly enough. When the lender finds out, they'll have bigger problems than our lawsuit." "What did they use the money for?" Gerald pulled out bank statements. "A new car for Claire, a vacation to Hawaii, designer furniture, credit card payoffs. Dorothy, they burned through $75,000 in 3 months." I sat down heavily. So when Claire said I should sell them the house, what she really meant was, they needed you gone so they could claim the property before the lender realized the loan was fraudulent. If you sold or moved, they could argue you had abandoned the property and try to take possession. And if I refused, they were going to try to have you declared incompetent so Marcus could take over as your guardian and control the property. That's why they wanted wellness checks and property assessments. They were building a case. I felt sick. My own son had participated in fraud, had planned to have me declared incompetent, had been willing to destroy me financially and legally to cover up a crime. "What happens now?" I asked. "We report the fraud to the lender and the district attorney. Marcus and Claire could face criminal charges, wire fraud, forgery, attempted theft by deception. These aren't small crimes, Dorothy. Will Marcus go to jail? Possibly. It depends on whether the DA wants to prosecute and whether they can prove Marcus knew about the forgery. I thought about Marcus as a little boy, how he used to climb into my lap when he had nightmares, how he would hold my hand at his father's funeral, how he had promised me, at 8 years old, that he would always take care of me. Do what you need to do, I said quietly. Report it. That evening, Patricia called. Dorothy, I just found out something. Richard and I are getting divorced. What? Why? Because he knew, she said, her voice shaking. Richard knew about the loan fraud. Claire told him what they were planning, and he told her to go ahead. He said you were just a... Her voice broke. He used the N-word, Dorothy. My husband of 35 years used that word to describe you, and I can't unhear it. Patricia, I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry. I'm sorry. I've been married to a racist for 35 years and told myself he was just old-fashioned or set in his ways. But he's not old-fashioned, he's racist. And he helped our daughter commit fraud against you. I'm done making excuses. Where will you go? My sister's place in Chicago for now. I called a divorce lawyer this morning. Richard can have the house. I don't want anything that was built on his values. After we hung up, I sat in the silence of my house. The ripple effects of standing up for myself were spreading further than I had imagined. Marriages ending, criminal charges pending, a family completely fractured. But I couldn't bring myself to regret it, because the alternative was letting them win, letting them take my home through fraud and racism, disappearing quietly so they could be comfortable. The next day, federal agents showed up at Marcus and Claire's apartment. The lender had reported the fraud, and now it was a federal case. Wire fraud across state lines, the lender was based in Delaware, made it FBI jurisdiction. Marcus called me from the police station. Mom, please. I need a lawyer. I need bail money. I need help. You need to face what you've done. Mom, I didn't know Claire forged the documents. I thought she just listed the house as a future asset. I didn't know it was fraud. But you knew about the loan. You knew what the money was for, and you knew that the plan was to force me out of my house. Don't act like you're innocent in this, Marcus. I'm your son. You're a 33-year-old man who committed crimes. Being my son doesn't exempt you from consequences. So you're just going to let me go to jail? I'm going to let justice happen. That's all. He hung up on me. 2 days later, the story hit the local news. Local doctor accused in elder fraud case. They didn't name me, but everyone in the neighborhood knew. People I had known for decades stopped by to offer support. Mrs. Chen from next door brought soup. Dorothy, we had no idea. If we had known what they were planning. It's not your burden to carry, I told her. You've been our neighbor for 30 years. You organized the block parties. You checked on us during storms. You're part of this neighborhood. Don't let anyone tell you different. Mr. Rodriguez from across the street came by with his grandson. Miss Dorothy, I told Miguel about what happened. I wanted him to understand that standing up to injustice isn't easy, but it's necessary. You're teaching all of us how to be brave. These moments of solidarity made me realize something important. I wasn't alone in this neighborhood. I wasn't an outsider who didn't belong. I was part of a community that valued me not for the color of my skin, but for who I was. A week later, the prosecution offered Marcus and Claire a plea deal, plead guilty to fraud and attempted theft. Claire would get 2 years in prison. Marcus would get 18 months and lose his medical license for 5 years. Gerald called to tell me, they're asking if you'll write a letter to the judge asking for leniency. What do you think I should do? I think you should do whatever lets you sleep at night. I thought about it for 3 days. I thought about mercy and justice, about motherhood and accountability, about love and boundaries. In the end, I wrote a letter, but not the one they wanted. Your Honor, I wrote, I am Dorothy Johnson, the victim in this case. My son and daughter-in-law committed fraud against me, attempted to steal my home, and harassed me with racist comments designed to force me from my property. They did this not out of desperation or necessity, but out of greed and entitlement. While it pains me as a mother to see my son face consequences, it would pain me more to see him avoid accountability. Justice must be served, not just for me, but for every elder who faces similar abuse from family members. I asked the court to impose the sentence that fits the crime, without consideration of our family relationship. Accountability is an act of love, even when it doesn't feel like it. The sentencing hearing was on a Thursday morning. I sat in the courtroom in the same navy suit I had worn to the restraining order hearing. Patricia sat beside me. Diane had flown in from Atlanta. Marcus and Claire stood before the judge, both in conservative suits, both looking smaller than I had ever seen them. The judge read my letter aloud. I watched Marcus's face crumble as he heard my words. Claire kept her face carefully blank. "Mr. and Mrs. Johnson," the judge began. "You targeted a 8-year-old woman, your own mother, with a sophisticated fraud scheme. You forged documents, lied to lenders, and attempted to steal property worth $800,000. When your victim refused to cooperate, you escalated to harassment and threats. The evidence shows a pattern of calculated predatory behavior." The judge sentenced Claire to 2 years in federal prison. Marcus received 18 months, with the possibility of parole after 12 months. Both would be on supervised release for 3 years after serving their sentences. Marcus's medical license was suspended for 10 years, not 5. As they were led away, Marcus looked at me one last time. His eyes were full of something: regret, anger, sorrow. I couldn't tell. I looked back at him steadily, without apology. I had loved him completely. I had raised him with everything I had, but I could not save him from himself. Outside the courthouse, reporters approached me. "Mrs. Johnson, how do you feel about your son going to prison?" "I feel that justice was served," I said simply. "No one is above accountability, not even family." "Do you have any message for other elders facing similar situations?" I looked directly at the camera. "Stand up for yourself. Don't let anyone tell you that you don't belong in the home you built. Don't let anyone use family obligation to justify abuse. And don't let racism, even from people who claim to love you, go unchallenged. Your dignity is worth fighting for." That evening, my house was filled with people: Patricia, Diane, Martha, and my old nursing colleagues, neighbors from the block. Someone had brought food. Someone else had brought wine. We sat in my living room, in my house, and we celebrated. Not because Marcus was going to prison. That part was still painful, still sad. But because I had fought and won. Because I had refused to disappear. Because I had chosen dignity over peace. "What will you do now?" Diane asked. I looked around at these women, these friends, this community. "I'm going to live," I said. "In my house, in my neighborhood, on my terms. I'm going to plant more roses in the garden. I'm going to host book club meetings. I'm going to volunteer at the community center. I'm going to do all the things I would have been doing if I hadn't been fighting for my right to exist in my own home." "And if they come back after they serve their time?" Martha asked. "The restraining order is permanent. They can't come near me or this property. If they try, they go back to jail." "Good," Patricia said firmly. "They made their choices. Now they live with the consequences." Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I stood in my garden under the stars. The roses my husband and I had planted were in full bloom. The house behind me was solid, paid for, mine. I had fought the hardest battle of my life. I had stood up to racism, fraud, family pressure, and my own desire to keep the peace. And I had won. Not because I was stronger than I thought, but because I had finally decided that my dignity was worth fighting for. And that was enough. 6 months after the sentencing, I woke up on a Sunday morning to the sound of birds in my garden and sunlight streaming through my bedroom window. For the first time in a year, I didn't wake up with anxiety tightening my chest. I didn't reach for my phone to check for threatening messages. I didn't worry about who might show up uninvited. I was free. I made coffee in my kitchen, the kitchen I owned, in the house I had fought to keep, and carried it out to my garden. The roses were preparing for their second bloom of the season. I had planted new ones in the spring, pink ones this time, to represent new beginnings. My phone rang. It was Diane. "How are you, sis?" "I'm good," I said, and realized I meant it, really good. "I saw the feature article about you in the newspaper. Local woman fights elder fraud and wins. Very impressive." The article had come out the week before. The reporter had contacted me after the sentencing, wanting to tell the full story. I had hesitated at first, but then I thought about all the other elders facing similar situations. People who were being pressured by family, people who were being told they didn't belong in homes they owned, people who were staying silent because family loyalty felt more important than dignity. I told my story so they would know they weren't alone. The response had been overwhelming. Letters from around the country, emails from people sharing their own stories. invitations to speak at community centers and elder advocacy groups. They want me to speak at a conference next month, I told Diane, about elder abuse and how to recognize financial exploitation. Are you going to do it? I am. Someone needs to talk about this. About how abuse doesn't always look like physical violence. Sometimes it looks like family members who love you but want what you have more than they respect who you are. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in years. I hosted a gathering, not a formal dinner, just friends from the neighborhood, old colleagues from the hospital, people who had supported me through the fight. We sat in my garden eating takeout and drinking wine. Mrs. Chen brought homemade dumplings. Mr. Rodriguez brought his famous salsa. Martha brought dessert from the bakery she loved. To Dorothy, Patricia said, raising her glass. She had moved back from Chicago last month, bought a condo downtown, and was rebuilding her life. To the strongest woman I know, thank you for showing me what courage looks like. To Dorothy, everyone echoed. I looked around at these faces, these people who had stood by me. This was what family really meant. Not blood or obligation, but choice, support, mutual respect. Thank you, I said quietly. All of you. I couldn't have done this alone. You shouldn't have had to do it at all, Martha said. But you did it with grace and strength. You made space for the rest of us to be brave, too. Later, as the sun set and people began to leave, Patricia pulled me aside. I got a letter from Claire, she said. From prison. She wants me to visit. Are you going to? I don't know. She says she's in therapy, that she's starting to understand how her racism was learned behavior from her father, that she wants to change. Do you believe her? Patricia was quiet for a moment. I want to. She's still my daughter, but I also know that wanting to change and actually changing are different things. And I won't know which one she's doing until she gets out. And Marcus? He wrote to me too, asking me to convince you to visit him. I had received 3 letters from Marcus in the past 6 months. I hadn't opened any of them. They sat in a drawer in my bedroom, sealed, unread. I'm not ready, I said simply. You may never be ready, and that's okay. You don't owe him forgiveness just because he's your son. But he is my son, and there's a part of me that still loves him, that still remembers the boy he was. The boy he was didn't commit fraud and let his wife be racist to you. You can love who he was and still refuse to accept what he became. Her words sat with me for days. I kept thinking about the letters in my drawer, about the boy Marcus had been and the man he had become, about whether there was a path back from what had happened. Finally, one quiet evening, I opened the first letter. Mom, it began. I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't know if I deserve for you to read this, but I need to say it anyway. I was wrong. Not just about the fraud, though. I was absolutely wrong about that, but about everything. I was wrong to stay silent when Claire made those comments. I was wrong to prioritize my comfort over your dignity. I was wrong to think that keeping the peace was more important than standing up for what was right. I've had a lot of time to think in here. About the man you raised me to be and the man I actually became. About the promises I made to Dad before he died, that I would always take care of you, and how badly I broke those promises. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not even asking you to write back. I just need you to know that I'm sorry, and that I'm trying to become someone who deserves to be your son again. I sat with the letter for a long time. Part of me wanted to believe it. Part of me wondered if it was just manipulation, words designed to make me lower my guard. But mostly, I felt sadness. Sadness for the relationship we had lost. Sadness for the boy he had been. Sadness for the man he might have become if he had made different choices. I didn't write back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I kept the letter. The following week, I spoke at my first conference. The room was full of elder advocates, social workers, lawyers, and older adults who wanted to learn how to protect themselves. I told my story from beginning to end. The dinner, the comments, the fraud, the fight, the victory. When I finished, the room was silent for a moment. Then an older black woman in the front row stood up and started clapping. Others joined her. Soon the entire room was on their feet. After the talk, people lined up to speak with me. They shared their own stories. A woman whose daughter had stolen her identity. A man whose son had forged his signature on a reverse mortgage. A couple whose family was pressuring them to sell their home and move into assisted living they didn't need. What do I do? Each of them asked in different ways. You stand up for yourself, I told them. You document everything. You get a good lawyer. You set boundaries. And you remember that you are not the problem. The people who are trying to take advantage of you are the problem. But their family, one woman said, crying. How do I fight against my own children? By remembering that real love doesn't require you to give up your dignity, I said. By understanding that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is hold people accountable. And by knowing that you deserve to feel safe in your own home, no matter what anyone else thinks you should do. 3 months later, I received a message through the Victim Services Coordinator. Marcus wanted to know if I would be willing to do a family mediation session when he was released on parole. I thought about it for a week. I talked to Gerald, to Diane, to Martha. I talked to my therapist, who I had started seeing after the trial. What do you want? My therapist asked. Not what you think you should want, not what would make things easier. What do you actually want? I want him to understand what he did, I said. Not just apologize because he's supposed to, but truly understand how his actions affected me. And I want to know that if I let him back into my life, he won't hurt me again. Can you ever really know that? No, but I can set clear boundaries. I can protect myself. And I can choose to give him a chance without giving him the power to destroy me again. I agreed to the mediation session. It was scheduled for 1 month after his release. When the day came, I dressed carefully, professional, strong, unshakable. The mediation room was neutral, beige walls and comfortable chairs. Marcus came in with his parole officer. He had aged in prison, gray at his temples, lines around his eyes. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. Hi, Mom, he said quietly. Marcus. The mediator explained the ground rules. This wasn't about reconciliation or forgiveness. It was about communication, understanding, accountability. Marcus, the mediator began, your mother agreed to this session so you could speak directly to her about your actions. This is your opportunity. Marcus looked at me, and I saw tears in his eyes. Mom, I destroyed everything. I know that. I sat in prison for 12 months, and every day I thought about that dinner. About staying silent while Claire said those things to you, about the fraud, the harassment, all of it, and I kept asking myself how I became that person. How I went from being the son who held your hand at Dad's funeral to the man who helped someone try to steal your home. He paused, wiping his eyes. I think I know now. I was scared. Scared of conflict. Scared of losing Claire. Scared of not being successful enough. And instead of dealing with those fears, I let them turn me into someone who hurt the person who loved me most in the world. That's not an excuse. There is no excuse. But it's the truth. Do you understand what you did? I asked. Not just the legal crimes, but what it meant for me to have my own son try to force me out of my home? I think I'm starting to. The therapist in prison asked me how I would feel if someone told me I didn't belong in my own house because of my race. If someone I trusted tried to take everything I had built. And Mom, just imagining it made me sick. And I did that to you. I actually did that to you. We talked for 2 hours. About racism, about enabling, about boundaries and accountability. About the man he wanted to become and whether that was possible. At the end, the mediator asked, Dorothy, what do you need from Marcus going forward? I need time, I said. I need to see through your actions, not your words that you've changed. I need boundaries that protect me. And I need you to understand that even if we rebuild something, it will never be what it was. You broke that. And that's something we both have to live with. I understand, Marcus said. And Mom, I know I don't deserve it, but thank you. Thank you for giving me this chance. I'm not doing it for you, I said honestly. I'm doing it for the boy you used to be, for the memory of your father, and for myself, because I need to know I tried. As I drove home that evening, I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the beginning of peace. The understanding that I could hold Marcus accountable and still leave space for the possibility of change. When I got home, I walked through my house, touching the walls as I had done so many times during the fight. But this time, it felt different. Not like a fortress I had to defend, but like a home I had earned the right to enjoy. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in my garden. The roses were in full bloom, red and pink and white, reaching toward the sky. My phone buzzed with a text from Diane. How did it go? I texted back, it went. And that's enough for now.